Hi, my name is Sam, and welcome to the channel. Today, it's going to be the crazy Christmas extravaganza. No, we're just going to be talking about three of the top three books that I think are going to be good for your generic comic book reader of different varieties. And then as well, I have three comic books that I would recommend to an artist or somebody who's generally just interested in the art of comic books, more than the story aspect of the creations. Well, we're going to be taking a look at just some Christmas themed comics to kind of get in the spirit of everything. Without further ado, let's take a look at some comic recommendations and some Christmas comics. Alright, so the first thing that I wanted to talk about were going to be top three books that I had picked up this year that I would recommend for any comic book reader. They're going to be readily available, shouldn't be too hard to track down, and I tried to curate a list that would, kind of speak to a variety of different kind of readers. I read pretty much about everything across the spectrum. Pretty easy for me to pinpoint, my favorite books and, what I've read throughout the year. Let's go ahead and take a look at the three books that I recommend to the comic book reader. Alright, so the first thing that we have here is going to be the Spy vs. Spy Omnibus, Antonio Farias. So, if you're not familiar with Antonio and his work, they kind of talk about this in the introduction of the book. As you can tell, this is a rather large book, so it is oversized. A lot of this in the front of the book is just going to be talking about he is from, communist Cuba, kind of escaping that and coming over to America, him getting his start at EC, working on MAD and all that good stuff. If you are into history or care about comic history, there's a lot in here that you can pick up from. Even some of the things that he had done in Cuba, as you can see, before he had actually come to America to work on, doing his Spy versus Spy stuff, mainly for MAD. But I'm sure as a lot of people, grew up reading MAD. I loved MAD as a kid growing up myself. The biggest thing that always stuck out to me was always the Spy versus Spy stuff, and I'm sure I'm not alone in that. There's been video games, TV shows, you name it, of the actual series itself. So it's pretty popular. It's a play on, the missile crisis and whatnot, and kind of what's going on here. It's just, your generic cat and mouse sort of thing. They're just kind of outsmarting each other. Biggest comparison I can bring is Tom and Jerry. But, they're just funny gags. Cartooning's awesome. The thing with this book is it's pretty inexpensive. Yeah, it's labeled at $75, cheap. You can find this book for pretty much next to nothing. I think that I ordered this through Amazon, and I think I paid, I don't know, 35 bucks for it. You can typically find this pretty cheap. I've seen this floating around in actual comic book shops, Barnes & Noble even, but like I said, Amazon, Walmart, and other places like that sell online all have these heavily discounted. So highly recommend this for pretty much an all ages reader. Doesn't really matter the age. Like I said, if you're into history and all that good stuff, there's a big chunk of the front of this book that kind of talks about, his upbringing and working on Spy versus Spy. Some pretty cool stuff in this book. Alright, so my second book is going to be Disciples, David Burke, Nicholas McCarthy, Ben Mara. Ben Mara is one of my favorite artists. I have Night Business and a couple of his other books. Outlaw guy, big fan of outlaw comics. But Disciples is kind of a story about, if you're into 70s thriller, cult sort of things. Think Charles Manson. Mandy is one of those movies that I can draw a close comparison to in terms of modern standards for this stuff. But your typical Texas Chainsaw, 70s grindhouse sort of deal is what we have going on in this. I do see a lot of Archie, especially like Sabrina stuff kind of going on in this. Mainly in the faces. You can definitely tell an outlaw artist from your typical artist. They all draw faces exactly the same. They all have a kind of a look to them, and a lot of that I think comes down to like the cheekbone, and then as well like the way that they draw the eyes. Very distinct style. I really liked this book. It's a very fast read. I pretty much sat and read this entire thing in one sitting. Pretty violent, So if you can't handle something like that, you know, I definitely wouldn't pick this up. It's one of those things, like I said, if you're into that grindhouse 70s horror sort of thriller, you know, grindhouse sort of deal, this is the go-to book for me this year. All right. So then we got Akira for the third slot. So this is going to be the entire box set. So you can get the box set for, I think it retails at $200, but you can find it for 180, 150, even cheaper than that on resale online. It comes in a 6-book set, and then as well it comes with the Akira Club, which we'll obviously flip through. The main reason why this is the go-to Akira set is these books, when they were released in America, you know, they were colored on the insides, which the originals were black and white. When they had gone through and localized, you know, the language and everything, they had taken out the Japanese sound effects. It just looks strange because they're essentially messing with the drawing at that point. In this collection, you get some of the colored stuff at the front here. Black and white all remains intact. It is on that really nice, you know, newspaper style stock. Gives it that manga feel. As you can see, the Japanese sound effects are still intact. So that is a big selling point for this collection. If you are big into it being correct to the source material, that is the way that it should be. If you've never read Akira and you're not even into manga in general, this is, you know, the greatest manga of all time. What else can you say about Akira that hasn't been said, you know, a million times over? I'm sure a lot of people can point to, you know, Dragon Ball Z as well. But you know, this thing is just a piece of fucking art. So besides the 6 books that you get, it also comes with Akira Club. You know, it comes in a cool box, kind of splits open, cool way to display your books. I keep Akira Club out 24/7. I keep this by my drawing table. I use it as reference, inspiration, everything like that. It's just one of those books that I always just want to keep within reach because there's a lot of things you can take from this book. So basically, this is kind of a behind-the-scenes production style of book, but you can see, just like I said, just a lot of behind-the-scenes production stuff. His machinery is just crazy. I really appreciate this close-up, and as you can see, there's scan lines on this. I want to say that they had snapped a photo of this off of a screen. I'm not entirely sure, you know, what that is or what that effect is on it. To make it look digital like that, like shot it off a CRT. Definitely isn't a filter. Yeah, character proportion, things like that. You can kind of see with those boxes. I guess there's a lot of things that you can take from for figure drawing. Characters holding pistols. This is in a way that you would see characters holding pistols like this a lot. Typically, they'd be a little more aggressive when they're holding the, you know, the weapon. This is kind of more relaxed, so it's kind of an interesting way to draw that. Besides, like I said, the 6 books that you get this bad boy, and in my opinion, this is, yeah, look at this, it's just crazy. You get all this behind the scenes stuff, and I think that the Akira Club is worth, you know, the price of admission for the package. Like I said, you can typically get in this box set for less than $200, less than retail. Thing with Akira single issues, the colored ones that they had, you know, put out are kind of hard to find. I really don't care for those. And then the other edition that you typically see in comic shops and whatnot, the paperbacks, you usually see like volumes 1 through 3. You don't see the rest of them. So if you want the whole thing, easy to find. Hardcover, it being black and white, the Japanese sound effects still intact, box set is the way to go. This would be my #1 pick for the comic book reader this year to pick this up. Okay, now we're gonna take a look at the 3 books that heavily influenced me as an artist this year. So I'm going to pass them off to you. So this list, again, isn't things that necessarily had come out this year, just things that I had picked up this year and are still readily available. So this is going to be Batman and the Max Arkham Dreams by Sam Keith. Sam Keith is one of my favorite artists. The Max is one of my favorite series of all time. Sam Keith is probably a top 5 guy for me. So you have him, you're drawing Batman and the Max in the same book, you can't go wrong. The Max's story is out there, so the story that's in this is kind of, whatever, it's throwaway. It's just more of an excuse to get the 2 characters together. The reason why I would recommend this for an artist, just besides Sam Keith's cartooning and his skill in general there, you can see just his different, styles kind of coming together. He draws really soft faces, especially on women, and he does a really good job, I think, with drawing women and drawing them in a more realistic aspect, not anything, that's out of proportion, giving them big proportions or anything like that. The reason why I recommend to pick this up is the Max isn't a book that you can just go out and pick up. There isn't collected editions of it that are readily available. Single issues, especially the later numbers, are a pain to find out in the wild. This is pretty much the only Max book that you can buy right now that is still, I don't even think this is in print, but you can still pick it up through Amazon, find them floating around at comic book shops and everything like that, because I'm sure they probably printed a million of these things. I would recommend to find this because Amazon, Walmart's, places like that, they sell this book for next to nothing. Thing retails at 25 bucks, and I think I paid $15 for it, so maybe even less than that. I think I paid maybe $12 for it. So you can get this thing for next to nothing, and while they're still out and purchasable, I would definitely hop on this, because as most Sam Keith things, especially the Max collected editions, they get pretty pricey. Definitely recommend picking this up because Sam Keith is the man. Alright, so we've talked about this before in my Steve Root Super Special, but we're just going to go ahead and take a quick flip through of it again. Steve Root is probably my all-time favorite artist. For things that heavily influenced me this year, unfortunately did not take the top spot. Mainly due for the fact that a big reason for my discovery of Steve Root was because of Space Ghost, which actually came from Alex Toth, so I don't know, some technicality stuff there. If you are an artist, I think this is pretty much essential to pick up our Steve Root sketchbooks, because you can see all the different styles that he implements on his drawings. The guy's just straight up an illustrator, so throw anything at him, he can do it. Cartoony, realistic, painting, ink wash, charcoal, watercolor, it doesn't matter, the guy can do it in spades, and he still practices everything to this day. I would just recommend to pick this up. There's just so much crap that you can just pick up from in this book. Technique, reference material even. So just a lot of cool things that you can pick up from. Like, for instance, these pages here, for when he did this shadow commission, all these different fabric folds and everything like that, I take a lot in my drawings. You hear people like Todd McFarlane talk about fabric when they're drawing capes, and he draws cape. I believe it was folded paper is kind of how he described it, as opposed to Steve Root. I don't know, it's like how you would describe the drawing. It looks wet, but it's not, you know what I mean? So it looks like it's, the material is in movement, how it should look. Fluid. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. The #1 influence this year is Faust. Faust is a David Quinn, Tim Vigil brainchild. I don't really condone the things that go on in these books, ladies and gentlemen. The main reason why I'm in for it is Tim Vigil's drawing. The dude can draw his ass off. The amount of black ink that's getting slung around. His perspective on buildings, figure drawing, literally everything the dude puts on paper is just crazy. If you're not familiar with Faust, This is an outlaw comic, and I would say this is the outlaw comic. It's extremely violent. It is pretty much gore porn, for the lack of a better term. Divert your eyes if you do not want to see, super graphic stuff, but this is what it is. It's, if you guys pay attention to, my art side of the, what I do here, a majority of the stuff that I do is in black and white, and this is a big reason as to why that is. Unfortunately, YouTube is going to freak out if you even show it. So you can see that there is it's a quick flip through. So you can see what's going on here. Just look at that. That is crazy. Like I said, if you guys pay attention to my more of the art side of things that I do, a lot of this stuff I pull from just the black ink getting flung around. Outlaw comics, black ink, sex, violence. It shows it all, and got a cool little excerpt from Ed Piscor and Jim Rugg back here, a cool little drawing of Faust by Jim. This is the #1 book for me this year. I would definitely recommend to pick it up. It's still readily available. I got mine from the local comic book shop. They still had it on the shelf. This thing is not in print anymore, I believe. It's $60. This thing usually is marked up aftermarket. There is the hardcover as well. This is the paperback, but you usually see this book for about $80 to $100. It's one of those books that's, I feel like, is going to get pricey as time goes on. So if you do see it at base retail, be sure to snag it up. It's going to be dramatically cheaper than getting all of this material collected through a single issues, because single issues of Faust, for the most part, are not cheap. Alright, then I just wanted to do an honorable mention. Let's throw in a kids comic. If you have kids looking to pick up anything for them for Christmas or whatever the case might be, if they're into Captain Underpants, Dogman, that kind of stuff, this is going to be right up their alley. Mark Tutuli, I think, fits in that Dave Pinkley sort of style. So like I said, if your kids think that kind of fart, burp humor is funny, this is going to be right up their alley. The reason why I picked this up is I always like to float around in the kids comics section, that Barnes and Noble and whatever, just kind of see what's going on. This one really caught my eye. It's called X-Pets. It's a play on the XMAS. A lot of funny stuff that actually goes on in here. Cartooning is awesome. Like I said, if your kids are into that, Captain Underpants sort of style, definitely recommend to pick this up for them. It's funny. X-Pets. Alright, so one of the things that I got into earlier this year was Motu, Masters of the Universe. I started collecting this toy line. It wasn't something that I really had, any connection to as a kid. I missed this growing up. Definitely was not in that age bracket. Just really never had interest in it later in life until as of recently. Went down the rabbit hole, started the Turtles. I've always collected that pretty much my entire life. So, what this book is, it's made by Pixel Dan. He is a toy historian, expert in all things Motu, Masters of the Universe, and I would also say he's probably an expert on Turtles. This is a book that he had made where it is a breakdown of, here's what the toy came with, here's all the accessories, here's what it looked like, here's what you need to look out for when you are purchasing these. It's a toy guide. So if you're somebody like me who collects a lot of the Origin figures, which are basically re-releases of the vintage, but with updated articulation and whatnot, I use this as a reference. Because you do run into where a lot of people will try to pass off the new figures as the vintage, so on and so forth. The Snake Mountain, I have one of these. It's like one of my favorite toy sets. It's badass. But the all-time is the Slime Pit. Let's be honest, everyone, the Slime Pit is the best. Everybody knows that the Slime Pit is the best. Or speaking of which, Patel, you fucking cowards, put out the goddamn Slime Pit in the Origins line. We're sick of waiting. I'll even take the Shredder slime pit that you've been teasing on the Turtles of Grayskull stuff. Just give us a damn slime pit. So, you know, I use this as cross-reference, make sure all the accessories are there, even if I do pick up vintage things. It's not something that I pull out often, but it does come in handy when you need it. So it's just one of those things that you pick it up for reference if you are a collector. Into toys, in general, I think that there's a lot of history stuff that goes in here. You know, he talks to people that created the original line at Mattel in interviews and all that good stuff. So there's a lot of things that you can pull from a toy collector in general, even if you're not into Motu. You usually find this at a discount. I purchased this through Big Bad Toy Store, and I got this at like 35% off, roughly. Pretty cool book if you're a collector of toys or Motu in general. So that's going to bring us into the meat and potatoes. This episode, we're going to be taking a look at some Christmas comics. Got a handful pulled here. Going to flip through them real quick. If I have anything to really say anything about them, you know, we'll stop and talk about them. We're going to have everybody's favorites that I do, the Ren and Stimpy and Beavis and Butthead. So there's going to be a cool little crossover episode I got for you guys. So let's not keep the people waiting. Let's start with Ren Stimpy number 15. Earlier in the run, obviously 15. Like I said previously, they did a million of these things. So this is February of 94, and you have your main creation team on this book. Dan Slott, Mike Kazola, Brad Joyce, Ed Lazzari on color. I'm not familiar with him. You know, it's just a fun little Christmas issue that they had done. I was flipping through this earlier, just kind of, you know, reminding myself what was in this issue before we took a look at it. And what the hell is this? I have zero recollection of this. William Shatner's Tech World. Anybody out there that is more versed in the weird ass trading card stuff that happened in the 90s, please fill me in on this. You know, I need to know more deep information than what Wikipedia or whatever the hell is going to give me about this. I'm assuming that this is just, you know, Will Shatner cashing in on the 90s trading card, you know, craze that was going on. But why? One of the other things, too, that was really cracking me up, they got a pretty good laugh out of me. You know, Ren is trying to get good calls on his phone, you know, sick of getting spam phone calls and stuff to him. So he wants to have a solution. Basically, Stimpy's solution is, hey, I'm going to give you a call screener that, you know, when people call, it lets you know what their IQ is, so you know if the person on the other end of the line is going to be, you know, a dumbass or not. So he's like, cool. So he hooks it up, sees the person calling, oh, they're 99, sick. But the person that's calling them sees that he's at 3. So, you know, it's just kind of a cool, funny little gag that got a pretty good laugh out of me earlier when I was reading back through this. But like I said, this is the main creation team that's on these first handful of issues. And I think that people point to the specific creation team on this book because of that. It's going to sound really ridiculous. This is something that I steal from these Ren and Stimpy books when I'm drawing, is how they depict stacks of paper. They do this with money and a couple other Ren and Stimpy issues as well, and I think there's a couple other ones like looking at coupons. This is something that I lift a lot, is this illusion of stacks of paper. There's like actual photos in here of people. Weird. Good old powder toast man. And then, of course, you can't go wrong with these 90s ads. Just look at this. This is beautiful. Yikes. 90s, folks. Some of the stuff is a little outdated, but it is what it is. Happy holidays. Here's a furball snowman from Little Snippy for you. Ren and Stimpy number 15. Funny stuff. Spirit number 12. This is going to be the Warren version of the Spirit recollections. As everybody knows, I love the Spirit, but I love my Warren magazines. It really doesn't matter which one it is. I don't know, it's like the layout of these and everything like that, just really the design of Warren magazines, I guess, is what I'm looking for. I really like their design. One of the things that I noticed right away. And I'm just gonna show you. Let's take a look at this character here and what we have going on in his face, kind of the structure, especially in like the nose and all that. Now take a look at this. This is a Todd McFarlane book that we're going to be taking a look at in the future. To this. See what I'm getting at? Very similar. I am sure that Will Eisner probably had a big influence on Todd. Not saying that he lifted it, but you know, it's just one of those things that I kind of noticed. In his cartooning, I see a lot of Norman Rockwell. It's kind of in the, you know, the noses and the mouths. When you look at a lot of Rockwell illustrations, you see that, you know, the, especially in kids, the round noses with like the red on them and very soft round features. And I see a lot, and I see that a lot in Will Eisner's drawing. And I believe that just comes from, you know, them kind of coming up around the same time, I suppose. I would assume that they were contemporaries, or were contemporaries. But do Will Eisner and Norman Rockwell have any crossover history that anybody knows about and kind of fill me in on? Give me a little bit of comic book knowledge I don't already know. I would assume, yes, that there is, like I said, some crossover there between the two guys, but hard to say. I'm really not too familiar with Rockwell. You know, outside of the cottage industry that dude had opened up for his estate. This is one of the panels that I wanted to take a look at specifically, or one of the pages. You can't tell me that Frank Miller didn't look at this when he was doing Sin City. Will Eisner clearly had a big influence on Frank Miller, but just look at this. It doesn't get any more Frank Miller than this right here. Here's Will Eisner doing it in 1948. Think about that. What we got going on here? Mego. Classic figures. Love these. Big reason why I have attachment to those figures is from Robot Chicken. You know, I'm a Adult Swim generation, so Robot Chicken, they use those figures for, you know, for their animation a lot of the time, so we got a big attachment of them because of that. Kind of interesting. Monster World number 6. This is from 65. There's nothing Christmas related in this at all besides the cover. That's literally it. I just kind of wanted to flip through the mag a little bit, just kind of show you guys. So as we kind of talked about in the past, Monster World was just a spin-off magazine that Warren had done because Famous Monsters was super popular, so they were trying to get 2 horror-themed magazines off the ground at the same exact time. You know, this magazine didn't sell as good, so it only went for a handful of years, so this can be a little more desirable to collectors. Especially like myself, they're not super expensive books. You know, there's a little print run involved, so because of that, they're a little more sought after. Like I said, it's just the design of the Warren mags that I love. Everything down to the page layouts, the advertisements, all that stuff. It's something that, you know, I'm definitely gonna take from at some point, is making like mock ads like this in a comic. Because these in of themselves are, you know, are funny. You can do a lot of play around those. Yeah, look at these, super lifelike for 98 cents. And I love selling people film, Super 8 film. It's crazy. You know, people don't realize that's what you had to do back in the day. You bought a projector and some film and you threw that stuff up, and that's how you watched your movies. Beavis Butthead number 12. So this one we're going to go in blind. I did not look into this since I, you know, picked this up. Look at this. Right off the bat, we got a Guar. Blockbuster Music. Did Blockbuster rent CDs at one point in time? I mean, I'm old enough that Blockbuster was around when I was a kid, up into my teens. You know, they kind of defunct at that point. I don't ever remember them having CDs. Interesting, just movies and video games. So who do we got here? So yeah, we got Rick Parker. I'm not familiar with the writing team on this. Rob Camacho, coloring. This is a little weird. This old lady kind of sticks out. Her style isn't the same as the rest of the drawings. It's kind of strange looking. Wow. Okay, so apparently the ads are going to be what's the takeaway is in this book. Look at that, Demon Knight, man. What a movie that is. Songs by Pantera, Megadeth, Ministry, and Rollins. Good old Rollins band. Yep, definitely see the Rick Parker here. Letting that style really come out. Yeah, why is she drawn like that? That is so weird. Oh yeah, this animated game, I played this a handful of times. You climb up their spears from what I remember there. It's an okay game, it's not the greatest, but... Oh, we're going all out here. What is this? Sunset Riders? No, what is this? Lethal Enforcers. I'm not even too sure if I've ever heard of this game before or familiar with it. Is it a light gun game? Is that what's going on here? Weird. Because here we go, them clowning on comics there. Okay, yeah, but the takeaway is just gonna be the ads in this. Euthanasia, huh? Just the amount of ink that they had to use to get this on this page, Lord. Platinum Jive. Not great. Out of all the Beavis and Butthead issues that I have, you know, this isn't one that I can really point to as a takeaway or that I pull out often to look at. Just Christmas themed, so that's why we're looking at it, but it's whatever. Like I said, the ads are more interesting than anything else that's really going on in here. There's some fun drawings. You can get a lot of this drawing style and a better story and better gags, I think, in other issues. I'm a sucker for the 90s ads, so those are always interesting to see new ones that, you know, don't get reprinted a million times. Alright, last one we're gonna take a look at here is going to be this giant size Sabrina number 220. I think the earliest Sabrina that I own is like, I think I own number 4, I want to say. That might be the earliest. Number 4, I think I own. My big beef with Archies, especially early Archies, is that nobody is credited in these things. So you have no clue who drew what, who colored what. It could literally be the janitor for all we know. You know, we're talking about a book here, so this is 73. You know, it's getting up there in age, and it's on that newsprint. The thing that I was pretty impressed by is it's not super yellowed. It is down here on the edges a little bit. The color on this is still pretty good for its age. A lot of these, especially on this newsprint, you know, it fades pretty bad over time. It's pretty impressive. A lot of the times you can see, you know, where the printing might be a little bit off on the coloring and everything like that. Where it has that weird effect where like the image has like that double image, or it looks like it's kind of blurry where it shifts to the side a little bit. This comic does not have that issue. The printing on this is just clean. Yeah, that's what I want to do is watch some Alice Cooper Chrome movies. See what we got here. America's first bicycle. Is that true? I doubt it. Now we're talking. Good place to advertise monsters is in a Sabrina comic, right? Sabrina 220. Alright, so I think that's where we're going to wrap it up. Just to kind of recap everything that we kind of talked about today. We had the top 3 books I would recommend to pick up for the comic book reader. We had, at number 3, we had Spy vs. Spy Omnibus. Number 2, we had Disciples Fantagraphics. And then number 3, we had the Akira 35th Anniversary box set. So for the top 3 books that I recommend if you're an artist or somebody who is more into the art of the book than, you know, anything else, story or anything like that. Number 3, I'm going to throw over to the Batman Max crossover. Like I said, the Max isn't something that's readily available or a series that you can kind of get easily. This is pretty much the only Max book that you can grab. Recommend to do that because Sam Keith. And then we got number 2. I've got to hand it over to the Steve Frood sketchbook from earlier this year. His 2024 sketchbook did just come out like about a month or so ago. I haven't picked that up yet. I definitely have to. The 2022 sketchbook is what we had previously, or the 23 sketchbook, sorry. Number 1 book, if you're an artist, that I would recommend to pick up is going to be the Faust, Love and the Damned collection. Like I said, that's something that's marked up a little bit from what I've seen, but you can find it floating around in local comic book shops, even online. Sometimes you can find it in random places, but for the most part, it's a book that gets marked up a little bit. You can find it, even if it's a single issues. Honestly, anything Tim Vigil related, I would recommend to get. Faust's collection is, I think, the easiest way and the cheapest way to collect all that stuff. Top kids comic I'd recommend to pick up, X-Pets. Again, it's just kind of a fart burp joke kind of book, very akin to Captain Underpants, that sort of, you know, comic. So if your kid's into that sort of thing, that's what I recommend to pick them up. We took a look at the Motu Toys of Masters of the Universe book. Use it as reference material. You know, if you're a toy collector, there's a lot of history, interviews, and everything like that that's also in the book. It's a cool little piece if you're just a toy collector in general, not just Masters of the Universe. All right, well, as always, thanks for hanging out and talking comics. Thanks, everyone.